Welcome back to Chache, the program where opinion counts. Today's guest is presidential spokesman Manoa Esipisu. Now, the Pope begins his first visit to Africa next week with Kenya as his first stop. He'll find a domestic environment rife with strife over political and ethnic differences. And you alluded to this before the break, Manoa, because you talked about the internal message that one would hope the Pope would bring. But it seems, though, that in terms of projecting itself externally, Kenya's doing well. It's just when we come to the domestic environment, right? And so we have hate speech and incitement and selective accountability for the alleged inciters, the alleged, for the people alleged to have spoken, speaking divisively. And that comes back to your doorstep, because before the break we were talking about double standards in corruption. And again, when it comes to hate speech, we have double standards.
I think the message of cohesion and unity has been one of those addressed singularly by the president and the deputy president. They talk about these things all the time, and they emphasize that a nation united will make progress a nation disunited won't. Obviously, there have been issues in terms of hate speech, and from where I sit, I've seen people from both sides of the divide questioned and respected. People like Moses Kuria have been questioned about it. People like the governor of Kiambu has been questioned about it. So those are people that are seen to support the administration. So if they are being questioned in relation to what they are saying and what it could do to the moral fabric of the country, it does show that there is clear work in ensuring that there's an even hand in dealing with hate speech. The thing that concerns everyone is that you keep hearing these things repeated and repeated and repeated. And what we say is institutions that are charged with this, and NCIC should do more, and certainly these people need to be need to be dealt with in terms of what the law says.
But we go back to the support, and you made this point earlier, that institutions should be capacitated. And the NCIC has said it doesn't have the capacity to carry out its mandate. It doesn't have the financing, it doesn't have the staff. It cannot follow through. But when it has tried to exert its influence, it finds fairly lukewarm commitment to the mandate that it's supposed to pursue.
I think the NCIC has made its presentations in terms of its financing through the channels. We expect that they would certainly be able to get a lot of what they are asking, so that they are able to do their job and do their job properly. Obviously, financing comes from the exchequer, so that's got to be dealt with that way. But in terms of then moving the cases forward, that would have to be a discussion between the NCIC as well as the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. Because the thing you don't want to happen is to see the presidency meddling in these cases. It just doesn't work. It doesn't bode well for the country. It doesn't work well for us.
Okay, so this is a message from Kaburu. Our strong institutions created by the Constitution have been weakened by our political leaders to favor them in pursuing personal interests, especially the EACC and the NCIC. We were talking about corruption, and David, I interrupted you. This from Joe Odundo. Corruption has become rampant, and I'm unable to comprehend why it's taking so long to prosecute the perpetrators. Let's hope the Pope will address the issue and advise accordingly. And I think that sets up the point you wanted to make about double standards when it comes to corruption.
Well, of course, that is something that this government has continued to face, and will continue to face, I'm sure, because the signals are not very clear. Where people believe in the public domain that this is a street case, you find all manner of corners being taken, compromised results at the end of it. Then you hear the president or the government, people are proclaiming their commitment, and then you see the results, they don't measure up. I mean, I don't know whether this is the message that the diplomats took to State House. I mean, Manoa hasn't told us precisely what the message was after they visited the Ethics and Corruption Commission. Did they have an envelope they brought to State House of protests or complaints from the EACC?
I think the diplomatic message was quite simple. They needed to see greater action rather than greater commitment. Commitment, they have seen it. What they wanted to see is greater action, and what they said is they were willing to do everything in their power to help. So if there is property bought by stolen money in their countries, they would like to help repatriate the money. You know that in terms of corruption, the biggest thing in this country has been that you prosecute people. Even if you prosecuted people, they still go home to their ill-acquired money. And the diplomats' message is that if they invest in our country with stolen funds, we need to help you to recover those funds. That was a big deal. Were there envelopes with anything other than that? No, there weren't. But I think that the greater message for us is that fighting corruption is one that we ourselves embrace. Just last week, the president formed this committee with the private sector on how to that is working through this week to give him some fresh options in terms of how they want to see the fight against corruption go. The thing about that particular committee is that corruption that is blamed on government is 70% of it is around procurement, and procurement is between government and private sector. And if government officers are culpable, there are private sector players that are culpable, because it's two-way. And what we want at the end of the week is for the president to be given an option that says, look, this 70% corruption, real or perceived, in procurement that is perpetrated by these two sides, this is what needs to be done to deal with the private sector and to deal with the officials concerned. Now, there are, of course, rules and regulations already in place that could deal with that for public sector employees alone. That's what the EACC does. But if you're going to have then that means the private sector does not account for its own role in corruption. Yeah. And this is what is going to be the big game changer. If the private sector has clear regulations on what can do, like the U.S. law on private companies involved in corruption, this is going to be a major step forward.
Last week on the show, just to carry on with the double standards, we had two MPs talking about the alleged fraud taking place at the Ministry of Devolution and Planning. And the presidency was accused of double standards in the sense that the Cabinet Secretary for Devolution and Planning is still working, whereas other Cabinet Secretaries who were implicated in corruption were forced to stand aside, have their names cleared, and then we see what happens.
I think the big deal there, and the one that no one wishes to go to, is the fact that this Cabinet Secretary really was a whistleblower in this case. And what you don't want to say, and the Deputy President alluded to this in an interview a week or two ago, you don't want to appear to be punishing whistleblowers. These other cases came through a process from the EACC. It put the names down. It said, look, these people may have done this or may have done that. They need to be investigated, and I think that's what happened. In the case of this the Devolution Ministry, the Cabinet Secretary blew the whistle. So you really have to be, I think, careful in terms of how you approach these things. If people feel that if they unveil in corruption, that they're the ones going to be punished for it, and I think just that's the message that the presidency has been sending. And then secondly, I think in relation to that, people that need to be interviewed have been interviewed by the EACC, and the what they consider to be the suspects they have handed to the DPP. So now it's to see how that moves forward.
But when Githinji was appointed, they removed the former post. There was a lot of noise made. There is a general feeling that the corruption there started with that movement. That people knew money was coming, money was going to be voted. They knew they had to establish channels of taking the money. That's why they removed the person and put the one now who is being looked for to be arrested.
I think there's always going to be speculation over who came in and why they came in and stuff like that.
There was public noise about that.
We have to deal only with the facts available to us, and if things have the wrong things have happened in the tenure of an officer, then I think what the institutions are saying is, look, let this officer account for the period these things happened, and that's what's happening.
Okay, around the Pope's visit, you know, money is being raised, and Duarte in Thika is concerned and says the Pope's visit will be a great deal for Kenya. But who is funding the visit? How much are they spending? And how much are we expecting to gain from the Pope's visit, which I think you responded to earlier? On corruption, we don't talk about it. We don't want more lies. Let's go back to the drawing board. Government bodies have failed. And just to clarify that question, we see people donating money for the Pope's visit. We understand that it's both a state and a pastoral visit. What is the division? How are things being divvied up?
For a state visit, the government funds a lot of events around the bilateral, so the Vatican and the state. Usually, right from arrival, how he travels around here, where he sleeps, how he is protected. Those are the things that concern the state. But if there is going to be a peace caravan from Lamu to Nairobi, the state is not involved. If there are 4,000 buses being driven from across the country to bring faithful to Nairobi, the state is not involved. If there is mobilization for the Catholic Church says that it has invited, mark you, 780,000 faithful for the Mass on the 26th at the University of Nairobi. The state is not involved in bringing those people here. Now, it is up to the church to raise the funds through whichever way it deems fit, to be able to mobilize and move these people. And it is a major operation, dealing with any numbers to that tune of 780 to 1 million.
Okay.
Talking about the corruption, and before we get out of that and look at the general politics, what has happened to those who have been, stepped aside, come back, or not come back, but they've been cleared? What is going on? There is pressure, reinstate them. What is the thinking up the hill?
I think ultimately the president has the prerogative to constitute or reconstitute his cabinet whichever way he feels. The law gives him the sole mandate to do so, and I think he will do so at the appropriate time.
Any explanation for the delay? Because we also expect a due diligence and expedition from the president.
I think what you might consider a delay may not be a delay at all. He just has to look at all the factors available to him. The one thing you don't want to do is start arguing about whether this decision has been just or not, because really he's got to look at all options and all.
Let me put it this way, and now this is where it dovetails into the politics. You must be aware that there is considerable unease or disquiet in sections of this country about cabinet secretaries from certain parts of this country who are sitting outside and whose cases seem to have been cleared by the relevant authorities, institutions, but they're not being reinstated. So there's agitation within those communities to bring back our people.
There's also claim by one MP who came here the other day that they are still getting a full salary.
I think in terms of Mutegi, you in terms of when you are when you step aside, the rules are that you continue to, you get some of your privilege. You lose some of your privileges, but you keep your salary. The thing that happens is that when you get charged, and then that automatically goes to half pay. In terms of the public service rules. So, and that has happened in the cases that it needs to happen in. I think the issue really is, the issue is really what David is raising, the agitation. And I go back to what I said before. The president will make a decision either way when the president is ready to do so.
Okay. Okay, just a matter of the privileges which are withdrawn. But there are also allegations that certain people have been completely removed from office, continue to enjoy state privileges and salaries, including the former CS for the internal security. Have you had this, and what is the actual position?
I am not aware that that's a fact at all.
So hopefully you can clarify that for us. You're quite active on social media.
Yeah, I can.
So you can.
We can get a response about
give us a response
the
to
park and continued.
Right. This is Chache. We're live on Citizen TV. We'll be back after this break.